COVID-19 may be in the rear-view mirror for some, but the devastation it left behind is still screaming from the wreckage. The injuries, the deaths, the silence. If you utter the words, "Isn't it time to move on?" in my presence, I'd advise that you duck. Recently, phase 2 of the New Zealand COVID inquiry was held. Over 31,000 submissions poured in. First-hand accounts from the vaccine injured, from grieving families of the dead, and from those crushed by the psychological and financial weight of the lockdowns. 31,000 voices crying for truth, for recognition, for justice. And how did our media respond? They didn't. Not a headline, not a whisper, not a shred of coverage from the mainstream outlets that spent years parroting government press releases as if they were gospel. They remain as silent now as they were from the outset. And in that silence, they reveal the truth. They are complicit, at the very least. Andrew Bridgen, I have asked you as a special favour to a New Zealander who is beloved by many here, not only because he was in Spartacus, but also because he has been seriously jab injured and he has had the courage to speak out. He's a New Zealander, but he has a British passport, so there is a link with your part of the world as well. Andrew Bridgen, meet Barry Duffield. Barry, it's lovely to have you on the show today, and I wondered if you could tell me why you especially asked me if you could speak to Andrew Bridgen. What was the reason behind that, Barry?
I think it was, the entertainment side of me watched Mr. Bates versus the Post Office, and I knew that Andrew had an association with that, and the similarities in how we've been treated here were just startling. So I thought it would be really cool to talk to him. I'd followed him all the way along this path so far, and it was really interesting for me. I looked at him and I thought I didn't want to insult him by saying he was what I thought was a great politician. I thought he was a great human being. I just didn't want to insult him by calling him a politician.
That's mixed praise, but it's a wonderful phrase.
No,
Andrew.
It's spot on. Actually, it's spot on. Yeah. There aren't many politicians who are regarded anywhere in the world currently, and certainly not in the UK. I can assure you of that. And I'm honoured to meet Barry, and I'm looking forward to hearing what no doubt will be a harrowing story, and having a platform to raise awareness about the vaccine harmed and sadly the vaccine bereaved increasingly. It's the same vaccines around the world, it's different people. And I've heard many of these stories, and there'll be very few people now who don't know someone who has been vaccine bereaved or vaccine injured in their circle of friends, unfortunately.
So at the beginning of 2026, I want your reaction to this. People who say, "Oh, COVID, look, we just have to move on. You know, that was years ago. It's done. There are other things happening now. Look at Venezuela." What do you both say to that? I'll start with you, Andrew, and then you, Barry.
Well, before I was thrown out of the Conservative Party for having a view on the vaccine safety and efficacy, which at the time was incompatible with my political party, the Conservative Party in government, they were quite open at the end. I mean, they said, they wanted to cover this up for 20 years. I'm aware that in the UK, we covered up thalidomide for 11 years. And as Barry points out, the post office scandal, which I actually uncovered very early on in my career in Parliament, back before 2012, they covered that up for another 22 years. That's what they do. Scandal after scandal, cover-up after cover-up, and obviously they never pay out compensation because normally the victims die. What they're hoping is that all the politicians, the scientists, the medical advisors will all have been retired before this becomes public, and I think to have, if we fail to learn from history, we're damned to repeat the mistakes, and we need to expose what's been done around the world. It's, in my view, it's the biggest crime against humanity that's ever been perpetrated against the people. A lot of those people are still in positions of power, and we need a completely new system. And the first way to sorting out a problem is admitting you've got a problem. A lot of people do realise we've got a huge problem with the COVID vaccines and other medications from Big Pharma. But we need to get to the bottom of this, and quite honestly, to reconstitute any trust in our institutions, we need to put those people responsible through the justice system, and see that justice is served and seen to be served for the people who've been harmed and damaged by these experimental medications.
And Barry, I want to come to you for your reaction. But first, Andrew, around the world, it seems to me they're saying to the individuals who've been harmed, both work bosses and at a governmental level, they're saying, hey, listen, just don't speak out. Don't make a fuss. Just kind of go away into your corner by yourself and feel alone, unloved, uncared for, injured, completely desperate. But just go and do that in quiet over there and don't disturb us. And the way around that, surely, Andrew, is this. A man of your stature, and you have a worldwide stature now, Jay Bhattacharya, who replaced Anthony Fauci, did an interview with both of us in which he said, Andrew, I agreed to come on because you're the only world politician who spoke out during the pandemic, and I admired you so much for that. So you, of this stature and your level of busyness, still agreed to come on and speak. It's very moving to one man in New Zealand who is jab injured. So is it telling those stories one by one by one and honouring these people who have been so hurt that we expose it? Is it that way that we do it?
Well, the exposure is not going to come from the top. It's not going to come from those who had a responsibility to protect the best interest of the public. Liz, I personally know UK politicians, very senior UK politicians, who admitted to me they were vaccine harmed or had relatives who were severely vaccine harmed. And we're talking about back in 2022, and they still haven't spoken out. This is the problem. So the solution is going to have to come from the ground up, and it's exposing and being brave and talking about your experiences. That's what's going to wake the public up, and they're going to realise that this is a very widespread problem. They say that the side effects are rare. They're not rare. They're at least one in 130 of severe adverse events, including the possibility of death. And people have been encouraged to take multiple rounds of these experimental so-called vaccines. It's like playing Russian roulette, quite honestly. And the whole mRNA platform needs to be suspended, and a full investigation, an independent investigation, where we get to the real science, not the bought and paid for science we've got currently.
Okay, let's move to our wonderful guest, Barry. I want to hear from you what you would say to somebody who says, hey, Barry, just go into your corner quietly. COVID's done. The story's over. And in that way, I want the people who are still remaining silent, those other people...
It's not over for Barry and the other victims, is it? It's not over for any of us.
I want the people who are still staying silent, the other victims, but also the bosses who made people like Barry Duffield have this jab in order to keep the job that he so needed, and also the nurses and doctors. It's time in 2026. That's my call at the beginning of the year. Speak out. Tell the truths of what you've seen and what you know, and support people like Barry Duffield and his enormous courage. But what would you say, Barry, to someone who says, hey, it's over. Just go away quietly?
Well, there's people like myself, so I and others that are in the same situation as I am. We live with it every single day. I can honestly say I don't have a lot of hope for 2026. I mean, we know what happened with the previous government. This is what we got foisted upon us and mandated to take this thing. But moving forward with the new government, who are now seem to be hell-bent on covering it up, I just don't have much faith in anything happening in the next few years. I see everything that's happening overseas, so there's so much information that's coming out, and we still in New Zealand seem to have our heads buried in the sand.
And it is around the world. I know Canada and Australia are trying to do the same with the agreement of the legacy media, who are just shameful human beings. Honestly, shameful. I'm so ashamed I ever worked in them. But Barry, let's begin with your story, just very briefly, to Andrew. So you were a star of Spartacus. You were a very successful actor and writer as well. Just tell us a little bit about you, so Andrew's followers in England know more about who Barry Duffield is.
It's a really funny one, Andrew. I mean, it's for the last 5 years of my life, encapsulating that into a few sentences is really difficult. But I can say on the 10th of August, 2021, I took the first jab. I took that because I had to go to the States and to Paris for conventions for Spartacus and to keep my job at Les Mills. Had I not had to have those things happen, I wouldn't have taken the jab. I was opposed to it. So I took the second jab 3 weeks later on the 16th of September. On the 17th of September, I'm a 6-day-a-week trainer. On the 17th of September, I could walk up and down my driveway without gasping for breath. I was getting chest palpitations, heart palpitations, breathlessness, my legs filled up with fluid and my gag reflex blocked. Absolute mess, no will to move. That moved into a tremors in my hand. So it just started with finger and thumb. That worked its way up my arm. As you can see, it's in my head now. It's in my left leg. Sleeping is virtually impossible unless I take something to help me to sleep. I've been in and out of hospital with kidney infections, repeated kidney infections, so I'm peeing blood, prostate infections where I was ejaculating blood, lung infections, which I've had for the last one I got was 5 months ago, and I still have the tail end of that. It just won't go away. It's been an absolute nightmare for myself and my wife. I lost my agent as soon as I started talking about what had happened to me and who I believe was responsible, which was squarely on the foot of Jacinda Ardern. No, I can tell you, they had a COVID inquiry here. So they had the COVID phase 1 and phase 2. And they had the opportunity to bring in Jacinda, Hipkins, and Bloomfield and question them. And it was the KC on that was Illingsworth. He had the opportunity to bring them in. He had the power to demand they come in. And I can remember the words exactly. They said they won't be coming in because this is more performative than it is informative. But he could have forced them to come in and answer the questions and negated that power. So we have zip chance of anything happening here, and that made that abundantly clear.
There was nothing in the media. There was virtually nothing in the media. There was certainly no outcry about what a poor job he did. Can you hold up your hand, Barry, just to show how bad the shaking has got? When you talked to me, you said the shaking has become really quite extreme, hasn't it?
Yeah, my head's nodding like crazy. I don't know if you can see it. It feels like it's more. I can feel it internally more than it shows externally. But hang on, I see if I can get my hand to the camera.
Is it too hard?
It's like that scene with Blazing Saddles when he says, "Hey, I'm a gunfighter," and he says, "Oh, well, show me your gun hand," and he says, "There's my gun hand." Or that's not my gun hand. This is my gun hand. Yeah. Do you know what's really interesting for me? And this is a joke, but it's how we feel. There's a guy who's in the doctor's office, and he's waiting very nervously for his test results to come back in. And the doctor walks into the office and very nervously looks at the guy, and the guy says to him, "Well, what is it, doc? What have I got?" And the doctor said to him, "You've got 10." And he goes, "Oh my God, what, 10 years, 10 months, 10 days, 10 weeks? And the doctor looks at his watch and goes, 9, 8, 7, 6. That's how it feels like for us. When's the next thing coming?
Perhaps we go there, we talk about your experiences in hospital, just how and I referred to Andrew about this, just how dismissed you have felt personally. Talk about how you felt treated by those to whom you've turned for help when you've said, I am vaccine injured. We'll start with the hospital, and then I'd like to talk about Les Mills, the gym franchise where you work, whether they have looked after you, because after all, they also did demand that you have that. So the hospitals, what's it been like in there, Barry?
Incredibly dismissive. The nurses have all been great because they had their particular roles to carry out, but as far as doctors go, incredibly dismissive. I had private blood tests that showed my spike protein antibody levels were through the roof and my IgG4 was through the roof. It took me to fight to get those admitted into my health records. I got diagnosed with Parkinson's straight away, so they refused to look at anything else, and they diagnosed me with Parkinson's. and then put me onto a Parkinson's drug that ended up putting a handful of sleeping tablets into my belly and a noose around my neck. So I went into an auto response and attempted suicide with no knowledge of what I was doing. I think they called it a particular name for it. I can't, off the top of my head, come up with it. But it's been incredibly dismissive through the health system. ACC actually came in and said to me, well, Mr. Duffield, let's look at your life cup. This is what you filled your life cup up with, and we may have just topped it up and spilled it over the top. So we'll take care of you for that little bit.
The rest is on you. That's what you meant. Yeah.
The rest is on you, exactly. This is your lifestyle, Mr. Duffield, caught up with you the day after you took the second injection. Coincidence, but it did.
Seriously. And just a final point there with the hand shaking. I remember you telling me, Barry, that it has worn bone on bone, hasn't it? The amount of shaking. So just describe that. So I want people who are saying, oh, he's imagining it, the doctors were right. This happened just after these jabs. But what has it been like, that bone on bone feel?
Well, now it's like it's inflammation. It's just everything is red raw. So my wrist hurts all the time. My elbow aches all the time. My shoulder aches all the time. It's like it's not my arm. I think somebody described it as alien arm. It feels completely alien to the rest of my body. I have no control over its movement. I'm incredibly slow. Like I said, it's gone into my head. It's into my left leg now, so I get tremors through the left leg. And sleep dep is about the worst part of that, because if you can imagine, if you put your head on a pillow and it's shaking like crazy, it's like trying to sleep through an earthquake. So I take Zoppy cones to sleep.
Have any of the doctors conceded that it's a vaccine injury, or are they still putting up a brick wall?
I have a pretty good doctor who absolutely says it's an adverse reaction to the second jab.
So have you been able to get that to your employer, Les Mills, the gym, and get them to acknowledge, yes, this came from us forcing our staff to take the jabs if they wanted their jobs?
No, what my employer has done is asked for a full medical review to see whether I'm still capable of continuing to do my job. Now, my job at Les Mills is 25 hours a week, so I'm part-time. It's the only income I have at the moment because I can't get behind a camera or in front of a camera. I still write and hopeful of getting a film made eventually one day. But they had me do a full medical review. It actually took, I had my doctor given the paperwork, and on the paperwork, Les Mills put in, Barry believes he has a vaccine injury. Now, I went and I said to my doctor, I think we should address this. He said, no, this is not a question. I go, but they made a statement saying that they think that I believe that, which is questioning whether I'm actually sane or I'm making this up. And I said, can we please, so I had a meeting with him and he asked me what I would like to do. And I said, I would really like to address this. At the end of that, it actually took my lawyer to speak to my doctor to get my doctor to broach the subject. And when he did broach the subject, he put this is an amendment. Barry has asked me to question this. Not I'm questioning it because it's wrong, but because Barry had asked me to. And give him credit, he did come in and say, he said, well, this is definitely an adverse reaction to the vaccine.
Honestly, Andrew, is this sounding familiar to stories you've heard?
It is. A lot of people who presented in the UK with vaccine harms, they were given psychological treatments claiming that they'd got some sort of mental problem.
It's gaslighting. It's gaslighting.
It is. It is, and I would hope that that's changed a bit in the UK, because I've quoted the figures on my social media many times. I mean, we've got 90% of the doctors and nurses now wouldn't take even the flu shot this winter because they've got no trust in the vaccines. They've seen the collateral damage, the human tragedy that's come in to our medical system since the rollout of the vaccines in 2021. So all the doctors, 90% of the doctors and nurses in the UK now are anti-vaxxers.
But I'm going to use the vernacular here, Andrew. This sort of arse covering, to use that famous phrase that really applies here, by both his boss saying, "Oh, Barry believes he's injured," instead of, "I feel terrible. I asked Barry." The boss, asked Barry Duffield to take this jab and he is now seriously injured. So I will do whatever I can, including putting in reports to make sure that this injury is acknowledged. Instead, they try to cover themselves. And the same with the doctor.
Well, I have I met with an old friend some months ago. He'd had 3 Pfizer shots, 2 in the booster. He's had 2 strokes. His wife was a GP. She's retired to look after him. And I spoke with his good lady, and I said, "Come on, tell me the truth. What were the doctors saying, and nurses saying privately about these vaccines?" And she said, "Oh, very early on, people were saying don't take any more. There's something not right about them." And I said, "And what advice? What would happen to any of you if you'd given the same advice you were giving each other to your patients?" And she said, "Oh, you'd be struck off straight away." That's the twisted world we're currently living in.
But Andrew, if we keep going down this path where I simply look after myself and I do not, the sacred commandment.
If you do that, all you're doing is hiding at the back of the hen house, hoping that they eat you last, and that's not going to be a solution.
The fox will get you as well. And I mean, that sacred commandment, do unto others the way you would have them do unto you. Treat other people the way you want to be treated, Barry. You have not received that from your bosses. But if they let you go from this job, I would ask that you come straight to me. I'd like to do that interview if they let you go, because the very least they can do is keep you on, even without you working, keep you on pay for what happened. And I think employers who force this should be made to do that around the world, Andrew. I know that would cost. And I know that the government and Pfizer, who rolled this out in New Zealand, would love it all to be on the employers, but they too should be financially liable, should they not?
Well, I believe we've got the evidence. We've had it for a number of years that the actual so-called vaccines, gene therapies that gained approval, emergency use approval around the world, they were not the same vaccines that went in people's arms. I mean, it was batch 1 and batch 2. We've got all the evidence of that. I gave that to the government when I was in Parliament, and they didn't come back with any satisfactory rebuttal, and the evidence has only increased since then. So, I mean, that's fraud, and fraud undermines any legal agreement and any waiver of liability. So I believe they've committed fraud. I think there's a way for lawyers to make Big Pharma responsible, and unless people are held responsible for the harms that their products do, we're never going to get safer medication, are we? And you have to remember, and people lose this fact, that the only fiduciary duty that big pharma companies have is to earn profit for their shareholders. It's not to give you, me, Barry, or anyone else safe and effective medicine.
Barry, your reaction to that?
I 100% agree with Andrew on that. It is all about profit and the baseline.
Where do you put the anger, Barry? Because you are so extraordinary. I mean, I was up at 3 a.m. to do this at 4 a.m. It's Andrew's 3 p.m. right now. But it's because you go to work at 5 a.m. when you are severely jab injured to work for basically a pittance in order to survive in your life, because there is zero government support for the injury that basically they forced onto many, many New Zealanders. You are so inordinately brave. You've written books. I'm going to read an article, an excerpt from one of your books at the end of this. You are so brave, Barry, and yet I've never seen you furious at them. Where do you put that anger?
Oh, I'm incredibly furious. I don't think that if I got put in front of Bloomfield or Luxon or any of these people that were involved in this in the initial rollout or in the cover-up, I'm not sure how I'd react. I'm incredibly angry. I had a reasonably good career as far as acting goes. I have 9 books. I have 9 books out now. I have 15 placements in the top screenwriting contests in the world. I can't sit in front of the computer now and focus long enough to be able to write. Am I unhappy? I can't sleep properly. I can't hold my wife without shaking incredibly. You know, and she's part of this journey as well. I'm incredibly angry. I'm just trying to stay focused.
Yes. It's that training that you do. By the way, where can people buy your books if they can support you that way through buying your books? Many times, Andrew, I've asked, can we raise money for you, Barry? Are you ready for me to do that yet?
I know it's always been a pride thing with me. I'm more about the fishing rod than the fish. I've worked my butt off putting these books out there, and if I can make money from doing that and give somebody some enjoyment from reading what I write, I would prefer that than somebody being a charity case.
Where can people buy the books?
On Amazon.
All right, we'll put a link up to that. But just this attitude, I'm sure it's the British lion in him, Andrew, that gives him this stoicism. We just need about 20 million more men like Barry Duffield in the world, uninjured, to stand up against all of this.
I'm hoping that when people view this interview, they'll feel encouraged to stand up and speak their truth as well. And that's what we're going to need to turn this over, because I say there's no appetite at the top. Indeed, they're keeping a lid on all of this and dealing very harshly with anyone that speaks out. I'd be interesting if Barry could tell us, how did he find the response of his fellow professional actors to his vaccine injury and his willingness to speak about it when so many have decided to take an alternative solution?
I could tell you, Andrew, nobody's reached out to me at all. And like I said, I lost my actor's agent the moment I started speaking about it. I've heard nothing from any other actor.
No, bad actors. Bad actors.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's put a call out to one of the big names you've worked with, Ryan Gosling. You worked with a young Ryan Gosling, didn't you?
Yeah, Ryan was 18 years old at the time. Really nice guy.
This the punk?
Yeah, that's him.
See, you're the hot shot cadet with the fancy weapons you picked on my two little brothers.
I don't know what your brothers told you, all right? But I didn't want to fight them, and I don't want to fight you.
In that case, you give me those fancy weapons, and we'll call it even.
Well, interesting story that. I don't have them.
If he doesn't have them, let's just go home.
Hey! It's about respect. If Pa taught us one thing, it's never back down from no cadet. Especially when he ain't got no weapons.
If anybody watching this has a connection to Hollywood, to any of those people, could you get this to Ryan Gosling? And maybe, Ryan, you could reach out and talk to Barry and then put his story out to all of your followers. We need stories to get beyond just those of us who've been interested in telling the dark truths of the COVID response. We need to get this into the mainstream. And Andrew, would one way be if people are jab injured, suffering as barriers, why don't they hold up their own phones the way you do on your talks? Make sure you follow Andrew Bridgen on X. I love the way you're doing your pieces to camera as you walk through the forest. Just hold up your phone and tell your story and put it out. Everybody who is jab injured, deluge X with your stories. Remind the world that you have not gone away. What's your feeling there, Andrew?
Well, that's they know the power of social media and getting your message out, and that's why all our governments are seeking to curtail free speech and what we can post online, and nowhere worse than the UK currently, where free speech is fine as long as it's the narrative that the government want you to have. And as you know, anyone who says that we haven't got free speech in the UK, the government are quite happy to lock them up as well. We're in a crazy situation. I'm interested that Barry has watched Mr. Bates and the Post Office, which is it's. The sad thing was, Barry, there was nothing there in that programme that I hadn't said 10 years before in the House of Commons. A lot of it was the story of my constituent, Michael Rudkin, and his wife, Susan, and how they were fitted up because they'd uncovered what was going on in 2008. and they were falsely accused of having stolen 44,000 from the post office, and Susan was actually criminally convicted of that. I got her conviction overturned in the first 9 of the 1,000 back in 2020, but they still to this date haven't had their compensation, so it's not sorted. But in that programme, the then junior business minister was a man called Nadeem Zahawi, and he proudly played himself in Mr. Bates and the Post Office. Well, he went on to be the vaccine minister during the vaccine rollout, and I have asked if he'll be that proud to play himself when we eventually make a documentary about what really happened during the vaccine rollout, and I guess he won't. I'm actually hoping he's otherwise engaged, possibly at Her Majesty's pleasure, or His Majesty's pleasure would be quite nice. And the shocking thing was that in 2014, when I'd got all the evidence of the post office scandal, I went to every journalist in the lobby in the House of Commons, where we've got supposedly the best journalists in the world, every media outlet, and to a man and a woman, none of them would run that story. And I told them, if you run this story, here's all the evidence, you'll get an award, because this is the biggest miscarriage of justice in the history of the UK so far. And it was very telling that in 2022, when I went to all those same journalists and said, the vaccines are hurting people and we've got to stop them, they wouldn't run that story either. We don't have a free press, so the answer is to keep our social media free, and we've got to hang on to those freedoms, because without freedom of expression, there is no freedom. Every freedom comes from that we have as a right, and we can't give up those rights. So yes, I'd encourage everyone who's got a view on the vaccines, whether it's first-hand or being a relative of someone who's been harmed by these vaccines, they should get it on record. In fact, I'm going to be, in the next couple of months, recording interviews with some severely vaccine-harmed individuals in the UK, and that'll be going out, hopefully. And I'm afraid some of them I've got to do them very early, because they haven't got, the prognosis is not good. Not good at all.
That's a wonderful idea. Barry, what's your reaction? And beyond that, could you tell us why you said at the beginning of this interview you felt there were great parallels with the post office scandal story in the UK and what's gone on in COVID?
Oh, you just read my mind. So the parallels between us and that were the isolation methods that the government are using. That you're
the only one. You're the only one.
We're very rare cases, and we're the only one. Exactly that.
It's very cruel. And Andrew, on that scandal with the film, you were not mentioned in that film, were you? I haven't seen it yet.
No, and it's interesting. You see, even Mr. Bates and the Post Office was a cover-up, because it was made by ITV, and they can look in their files and see that I bought them all that material in 2014, and they didn't make the documentary till 2024. And then when I look into that, you see the person who was in charge of the Post Office and Royal Mail when most of the damage was done. Horizon was introduced in 1999 under the Labour government, and until 2010, the person in charge of Royal Mail and the Post Office was a man called Adam Crozier, who actually went on to be the chief exec of ITV after 2010. So he wasn't going to run that story. And when they did run it in 2024, they wrote their former chief exec out of that story as well and laid all the blame on Paula Venables, who was culpable, but most of the damage was done while her predecessor was there, including the damage that was done to my constituents, Michael and Susan Rudkin. So even when they did do the release of that Mr. Bates and the Post Office, and of course, Alan Bates, I met him on many occasions while we did the investigation. He would appear to have been bought off by the establishment. And he's now Sir Alan Bates, and he's very good friends with the establishment and Richard Branson, and going out to Necker Island and having great times. And I understand that Alan Bates's settlement has been agreed. He's got his compensation. Unfortunately, a lot of the members of his campaign group, most of them, I don't believe, have settled their claims yet. And that's very sad.
How many people are we talking about, Andrew, roughly?
We're talking about 1,000 that went to prison or got criminal convictions. Many of whom went to prison, probably maybe another 200 in the pilot scheme, and thousands and thousands that were coerced to pay money back to the post office that they didn't owe because it was a computer error, not a financial loss. I mean, I had a guy moved into Northwest Leicestershire when I was the MP here, and he made an appointment with me, and he'd come from near Wales, and he said, "I want to talk to you about the Horizon post office system. You won't know anything about that." And I said, "Well, I might know a bit more than you think." And he'd run a post office for 18 months. And he said every month he was money down on the accounts, and he was putting his own money into the till, so he wasn't making any money out of running the post office. And he said, "Look, I just want to hand it back. I can't make this work. I'm short every month. I'm not making any money. I'm just working for nothing." And eventually they did, and they did a balance of the accounts, and he signed, and he left, and he moved to Northwest Leicestershire to look after his mother, who was disabled. And his only income was a carer's allowance, which is a pittance. And he said 6 months after they'd signed it at all, and he said on the last day he gave them £70 out of his wallet to balance the books on the last day. And then they came after him 6 months later and said, "You owe us another £3,000," and they took it from his carer's allowance.
Oh, that's disgusting. So what are we? Barry, your reaction.
No, that's just disgusting.
What are we talking here, Andrew? Let's take the 30,000-foot view. We're talking about massive, worldwide, scaled-up bullying of individual human beings by a very small coterie, are we not, of deeply devious, disengaged, psychopathic people who are the parasite class, and many just below them who are, to me, the metaphor is like the guards in the prison camps in World War II. They know what they're doing is wrong. They know what they're going along with. They would not like to be subject to. They would not want to be treated the way Barry Duffield's being treated, or those post office people. But they're willing to go along with it and look the other way. Is that what's happening? We seem to be in a world, people say to me, a world without truth, a world without integrity. And yet look at you two men. Look at what you've fought for years and years, Andrew. You've got great integrity, and that's why people, frankly, love and trust you. That's why Barry asked to talk to you, is it not, Barry?
You know what, Liz? It's the new us and them. If it's not race, it's not sex, it's vaccinated, unvaccinated. If it's not vaccinated, unvaccinated, it's vax damaged, not vax damaged. I put up a lot of posts on Twitter and Facebook, and I'm very vocal about this. And occasionally I get them come back and go, "Hey, I had sex and I'm okay. What's your problem?"
Yeah, well, I drive my car every day, but some people have terrible accidents. Not saying it can't happen. I had two before I realised. The second one hurt me. Nothing like as bad as yours. I had two AstraZeneca. The second one, I was well in my 50s, and didn't suffer from any allergies, and suddenly I've got hay fever for the first time in my life. Then I came out in hives for 6 months, like nettle rash all over my body. I'm taking antihistamine. I was taking antihistamines 3 times a day, and also suddenly I've got loads of food allergies. Loads of foods I can't eat where I didn't have any problem before. That's all autoimmune problems. That's because it really damaged my immune system, and it's all explainable when you look at how the vaccines are supposed to work and the spike protein. And our immune system's only got so many troops in it, and if they're spending all their time sorting out spike protein we're making ourselves, then you just haven't got the resistance to other things. And it's quite ironic that I'd run a very successful potato business, wholesale and processing business, for nearly a quarter of a century, and because it's the deadly nightshade family, for a while I couldn't even eat potatoes.
Wow.
A life without chips, I don't think I could stand that.
That's grim, isn't it? It's grim. There's very few things as versatile as a potato. But what I will say is that taking some treatment since and building up my immune system all the time, I have managed to reduce those symptoms down enormously over the last few years. So I think your prognosis is better the longer it is since you took the last vaccine. But I mean, I've met people who claim that they've had 10. I think there's a lot of placebo out there. When I spoke to the Americans very early on, the awake scientists, Dr. Peter McCullough, Pierre Corey, Dr. Ryan Cole, and others, Robert Malone, that they seem to think that 5% of the batches were responsible for 85% of the fatalities in America, which would indicate that the vials are not homogeneous. There's hot batches and others that would appear to be inert.
And Barry Young's data in New Zealand shows that many of the batches sent down to the South Island seem to be far more toxic than those spread around the most populous city, Auckland, because they didn't want people living next to somebody who was keeling over straight away. So they were very cunning the way they rolled it out. I also think, Andrew, there was an air of us as petri dishes, really experimenting, trying this batch here and that batch there and seeing how it all works. The coldness and the cruelty of it all. Perhaps you could give that summary you've given before, Andrew. What is the bigger picture here? How, for people watching this who are saying still, no government would hurt its own people. No government would want to roll out a policy that does this. It's just not possible. You have to go there if you want to really open your eyes, don't you, Andrew, and wake up to the truth of how these globalists are running the world at the moment.
Well, they've got the politicians either running scared or in their pocket, unfortunately. And I thought I had friends in Parliament. I thought I had, dedicated public servants as my colleagues, and that wasn't the case. And when they're willing to admit that they've had 2 heart attacks after the second Pfizer shot, and they still won't speak out, or their sister is paralysed with Guillain-Barré syndrome from the neck down after a Moderna booster. Our system's not working, and it wasn't the House of Commons with the intent to protect and do best by the people that I thought I was serving in. And I thought, I'm going crazy here. This is my whole model of how I thought the world worked was smashed all over the floor. And it's quite a grieving process, but I think we have to be pragmatic. There's the way the world is and the way the world we'd like it to be. And unfortunately, we have to live in the world how it is and accept it with all its faults if we're going to try and make any progress, because it's a fatal mistake not to appreciate how the world is. And the world isn't really how we thought it was. And when I can be warned as a final warning that you're taking on the most powerful vested interest in the world with all the personal risk for you, which that will entail should you continue to speak out about the vaccines. I think they believe it. But there's a lot of us, there's not many of those, and I quite fancy the odds, to be honest.
And Barry, you are one of millions who supports Andrew Bridgen and admires him, even though I don't know if you do vote in the elections over there while you are on that passport, but what was it that made you say to me, please, Liz, can I have a conversation with Andrew? Just talk a little bit more about that, beyond the post office scandal story.
Oh, I don't think there's a whole lot to say. Like, I've watched Andrew's interviews over the years, and I just completely agreed with him. I thought it was incredibly brave of him to be standing up and putting his head up on the block where many wouldn't.
Yes. What would you like to come from this interview then? That's really
they were going to force the vaccines down to babies of 6 months in the UK, when there was no healthy child, basically under 18, that has ever died of COVID anywhere in the world without massive comorbidities. And I knew by that stage that 1 in 120 was probably going to die or suffer a life-changing injury, and that was murder. And it did cost me. But I mean, you got a chance to play a hero in a film. I actually got a chance to save some children's lives, And I feel very fortunate to be able to do that. And despite what the government will say, they never were able to pass that in the UK Parliament because they daren't after I spoke.
What was the youngest they jab? Children in the UK?
They went down to 6 in the UK.
It's still disgraceful, isn't it? That's a brilliant achievement, though, that you stopped that. I mean, is that the real goal here? Our governments want population reduction. Is that as stark as it gets, Andrew?
It's difficult not to come to that conclusion when you look at the way it's been rolled out, and they've particularly gone for what we'd call the developed world and the Anglosphere.
Yes.
I think they've really hammered the UK, Canada, Australia, New Zealand. I think they want a great reset. They want us to accept reduced freedoms, and they've gone for the people they think will offer the most resistance. They've really hammered us. And they are hammering us. I mean, our governments, I honestly believe, are traitorous. They've committed treason against the public, which is conspiring with foreign powers against the people. Which is, when I look back now and I think, why did Tony Blair in 1997, the first piece of legislation his new government put through was never advertised, never in their manifesto. They never talked about it. But Barry, the first thing Tony Blair's new government did in 1997 was take the death penalty out of the Treason Act. I wouldn't have thought that was a priority for government, having been out of government for 17 years, unless, of course, you knew that you were going to be committing treason. And I think every government has committed it since.
Your reaction, Barry?
Oh, I'm listening and agreeing.
And
I think he's dead right.
Beyond that, Andrew, when you say the Great Reset, what's your version of that Great Reset?
Well, they want rather less of us. I'm afraid I think the robotics and the AI is a lot better than we're being shown, and they feel that they don't need very many of us more than for their own personal amusement. And I think one of the World Economic Forum representatives said a long time ago, unfortunately, we're in a situation now where it's easier to kill 1 million people than control 1 million people. And the control measures that are coming in are horrendous. I mean, we're going to have digital ID. They've basically decided that the model for humanity to manage us is the Chinese social credit scoring system. They know they can't get people to vote for that in a democracy, so they're just bringing it in through the back door, and we will start it. It'll always be for our convenience, of convenience and safety. And as we know, anyone who's willing to give up convenience, give up their freedom for convenience and safety, they will get none of those things. And the only thing that's convenient is it's very easy for the government to manage us. And then they, as Tony Blair said, how will we know without digital ID? How will we know if everyone's up to date with their vaccines? And I think we know what vaccines there will be. These are dark days. But I think we're in a privileged position that there's never been a time where so many of us around the planet know what's going on. And if we know what's going on and we talk about it, I think, and although I stood in Parliament on my own, apparently, I was standing with the truth. And you're never alone when you're standing with the truth, because people only ever come to you. I haven't had anybody coming to me saying, well, actually, Andrew, I've come to the conclusion that they are safe and effective after all. There are only people ever come to me and say, you were right. They're not safe and they're not effective.
And you had people applaud you in Parliament, didn't you? Not those who were in power, but the real people applauded
in
you.
The public gallery. Yes. Yeah, it was unprecedented. They've never, ever had the sound break through the bulletproof glass before, but I mean, it just drowned everything down. And I just couldn't help but look at the government and opposition ministers who were opposing me in the chamber, and the look of horror on their face, because they knew that a large proportion of the public know. And one thing is, I mean, Barry, once you know what's going on, there's nothing the government can do or whatever propaganda they can give you that's going to persuade you that you don't know what's going on. There's no way back. It's a one-way street. And I think one of the reasons they're pushing all this control measures over humanity now around the world, the digital IDs and the curtailment of free speech. I mean, 12,000 people a year in the UK now are being locked up for social media posts, criminally charged.
I know.
It's the highest in the world, and we don't have the biggest population in the world by any stretch of the imagination. That's because they're panicking. They need to exert control. And the trouble is, the more they push their narratives, the more it does force people to wake up and confront the unpalatable truth. But I mean, I'd rather have unpalatable truths than sweet lies any day.
Have you heard of Konstantin Kisin?
No.
He's a YouTuber, blogger, Russian guy. He talks about Russia having something like 400 or 500 arrests last year for Facebook and social media posts, as opposed to the UK having 12,000. And he says now, who are the communists?
And Russia's got more than twice our population as well.
Yeah. But his point is, who is the communist here?
Well, I'm just glad, Barry, we live in a free country.
Yeah. Well, it's not much different here.
It is not much different, and I want to really sheet home to Philip Mills, the head of your employer, who has a vast reach actually across a worldwide empire. Philip, if you are hearing this for the first time really from Andrew Bridgen and realising the seriousness of it, go to Agenda 2030. Could you just briefly allude to Agenda 2030? Because it really is, Andrew, it is communism and Marxism by another name, isn't it?
Well, the Agenda 2030, the so-called United Nations Sustainable Goals, which all governments have signed up to, and no parliament ever talks about, so they're never really put to the people. And they all sound very good about, equality, and freedom over your sexuality. But I mean, what it is it's pushing the trans agenda onto our children. They talk about, everyone having a fair share of energy and resources, but that means basically rationing it out. They talk about, environmental sustainability, and that's net zero. And people are coming to the conclusion that we're the carbon that they actually want to remove. And all of this is based on a complete fallacy. There is no scientific support of that. But as the World Economic Forum has said many times, we own the science. And I think we can conclude that, 97% of scientists agree with the people who do the funding. And that's the way we've got to. And as I said in the UK Parliament some years ago, we need to get the politics out of our science and get some real science back into our politics if we're going to make sensible decisions that are basically going to benefit humanity. And always having these constant emergencies, whether it's, we had an emergency over, we voted to leave the European Union. It wasn't an emergency, it was a great day. But we had the Brexit crisis. Then we had the COVID crisis. We've got the environment crisis, the global warming crisis. Everything's a crisis. And the problem is that if they can keep people in fear, once they're in fear, they tend to not make as rational decisions. It reduces critical thinking and also forces humans into a sort of herd mentality where we can be corralled in a certain direction if we think that's the direction the herd's going in. And unfortunately, they herded us towards taking an experimental vaccine, which was completely unproven and untested. And they knew what they were doing. There's no doubt about it. They knew what we're doing. It wasn't an accident. It was deliberate. And people who've done that need to be certainly held to account. And that's the only way we're going to get any sort of trust back into our politics, our science, and our health services. And the doctors and nurses, I'm afraid, have become complicit because they know. And if you know of a crime's being committed and you don't bring it to light, I mean, you become part of the crime yourself. And that's how insidiously it's spread through our parliaments, through our civil servants, and through our health institutions. It's a conspiracy of silence around I mean, in the end, when I went to the journalists in the lobby and wanted to talk about vaccine harms, I mean, they just ran away. They just don't want to hear about it because they can't. They can't hear about it. And it's no way to go on at all. Do you think Jacinda Ardern will ever be able to come back to New Zealand? Because she's now after a top job, isn't she?
With the UN.
What would you say, Barry, if you met Jacinda Ardern?
Oh God, Liz, I'm guilty of this. I voted for her twice. I actually believed that she could do something with the country. It was self-interest on the first time I voted for her because she came in and she fought for us with the tax credit incentives for New Zealand films. So there was definitely a self-interest there. The first time she was in and it was a coalition government, I thought maybe if she got opened up and they were in power on their own, they could do a little better. And I'd never voted Labor before in my life. So I thought, give it a crack. And she went against everything that she'd been mandated to do and just went after her own causes, all the ideological causes that she wanted. I'm disgusted with myself for that.
But she was a young global leader, and Klaus Schwab claims that by 2020 they had 4,000 of those in positions of power around the world. And I mean, that's a huge influence. I don't know whoever voted for Klaus Schwab to have that influence, and obviously he claims that he's penetrated the cabinets of the world, of world governments. So, well, he's not penetrating me, Liz, I can tell you.
Yeah.
Or me. He's an amazing Bond villain, isn't he?
All he needs is a white cat, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Really?
And but in terms of 4,000 of the young global leaders placed into power, that goes right to questions of how legitimate our elections are, because people are being turfed out, as you have been, Andrew. Previous elections, 63%. Last election, the one that you had last year, 3%, and you were turfed out because they couldn't have a truth teller in there. So for people who say, no, the system's working fine, open your eyes and look. There is a devious plan that's been really generations now in the making, hasn't it, Andrew?
It has, but I mean, the globalists are all in. I mean, in the game of poker we're in now, this is, we're all in. We're in. The public, we were always all in, but they're all in. And as I've said many times, on the turn of the cards over, I don't know, the next 12 months or so, we're going to decide the fate of humanity. And we might not have a brilliant chance, but we've probably got the best chance we've ever had. And there are many hills worth fighting on and standing on, and freedom from the tyranny of government. And if we accept digital ID, I mean, you're giving away not only your freedom, vicariously you're giving your neighbours' freedom away as well. If you succumb, you're making it easier to suppress them. But you're giving away your children and your grandchildren's freedom, and you're giving away the freedom of generations of our nations yet unborn, because this is a one-way street. And to give that sort of power to a government, you'd have to not only trust this government, our current governments, and that's never been less in the UK. They're down to sort of 11-12% approval rating, and it's gone down in a record time. Starmer's the most unpopular prime minister we've ever had. So you'd have to have trust in this government, but you'd have to have trust in governments that are not even elected, every future government, because they're never going to give you the power back, and they'll all have the power to control your life. Well, that's quite a lot of trust. They're not people, anyone who's willing to trust like that, they're not really people to be allowed out to go and buy a second-hand car from anybody.
Now, Andrew, have you seen the Pfizer contract in the UK?
No, we've never seen the Pfizer contract. I did get hold of a copy, an unredacted copy of the South African contract that was signed 6 months after the UK had signed. The UK government won't release the unredacted Pfizer contract. Obviously, I saw in the South African contract that they made no guarantees about the safety or efficacy or side effects from the vaccines. And since the UK had signed 6 months earlier, I can't imagine that it had anything else in there. It's the contracts are damning. And of course, if they were genuinely safe, you wouldn't need immunity from prosecution, would you?
Yeah, it's the same here. We've had OIA after OIA thrown at the government to try and release the Pfizer docs, and they refused to do it.
But which vaccine did you have, Barry?
I had 2 shots of Pfizer.
That was the main one in New Zealand. It was rare to have anything else. Jacinda Ardern did some very beneficial deal for her, certainly, with Pfizer. But that's what was pushed on us in New Zealand. I asked Barry this, but how do you stay calm, Andrew? How do you stay so calm and sanguine and not furious at this? I know that underneath there's a real driver in you for good to win over evil, but what keeps you going? For people who are watching this and going, this is horrific. How do we, the people, win in this war of good and evil?
Well, I think every day there's more information coming out and more people are waking up. We're being offered plenty of distractions to take our focus away from what's been going on. I mean, but the UK government are desperate to get us into a major war with Russia against the public interest and against the public support. That's because they need a big war to cover up the lies that they've told to the people, the money they've stolen from the people, and also the crimes they've committed against the people. And if we can avoid digital ID and we can avoid a major war, the truth is going to come out. I'm absolutely convinced of that. I'm determined not to give those who perpetrated these crimes against my people and people around the world the comfort of that 20-year cover-up. I'm determined that that's not going to happen, and the sooner we get to getting the truth out there and acknowledged, then the sooner we can get on with some real research to help people like Barry and the millions of people around the world who are suffering with vaccine injuries, and the sooner we can stop any people further being injured by this extremely dangerous experimental treatment.
You know what, Andrew? Something really interesting. Sorry, Liz. Sorry to cut you off.
No, it's wonderful. I love it when you
I did a thing called the Safe and Effective Medical Roadshow. It was put together by a lady called Donna Clapham here. And so we travelled to New Zealand to meet other people and to take with us deregistered doctors, nurses, scientists. And we had some amazing people on the panels. And we went from centre to centre to talk to people about their injuries. And a lot of the people that came along were injured or who had lost people who had died. So here, apparently, we have very, very minimal. But when you're on the road and you actually meet these people, you realise that it's just absolute bullshit. But I met people like myself who have the same kind of tremors. Now, just as an anecdotal story, is I met a lady called Danielle. Danielle, same tremors, entire body was gone. So she's 23 years old. My heart went out to her. She was diagnosed with POTS. I have a friend in Italy who was the same tremors as me, but in the right arm where he'd had both shots. He was diagnosed with Parkinsonism. I'm diagnosed with Parkinson's. They can't make their minds up what it is. But traveling the country, I met all of these people who had the same kind of symptoms. And when you meet them and you know that you're not alone, that they are in the same boat as you are, you realize how much of a cover-up it actually really is.
Well, I did an interview a few years ago in a warehouse in London at an undisclosed location, and it was quite it was quite secretive at the time, and it was telling that the cameraman was about my age, and he came to me after, and it was a long form 3-hour interview, and he came to me afterwards and said, "I'm so glad you talked about your side effects from the AstraZeneca shot," he said, "because I had 2 and I had exactly the same symptoms that you had. And I've still got exactly the same symptoms that you've got." And I think talking about it is what they don't want, because we've got a lot in common. We've all been subjected to experimentation. Some people have reacted differently. I don't think some people have taken 6 and 8 and don't seem to have had any side effects. But for others, if you've had a hot batch, it's been life-changing for many, many people. And the answer is they're not experimental anymore. They've gone into billions and billions of them have gone out into 8 billion shots have been given out. Why do they still, if they're safe, why do they still need immunity from prosecution? And if they're not safe, why are they still giving them out?
Yeah, 100%. We are the experiment.
It's just awful.
Well,
Andrew,
I think President Obama said that, didn't he? He said we've done an experiment. He actually said that regarding the the vaccine rollout. We've done an experiment.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, maybe we go there to the Trump administration. I mean, many of us are restless now over a year in, and why is the speed of confronting the issue of the COVID crimes so glacial?
RFK's done some good work, and last week he's now announced that in America, that doctors who don't push childhood vaccines and the COVID vaccines, they're not going to lose any financial payments for that. Well, I mean, that's a good move. But if the doctors shouldn't be incentivized to push them, it isn't a better move just to suspend them while we do an investigation into the harms they've caused?
Absolutely. You said a year or so ago to me, Andrew, off air, you said, I really just want to work with people. You talked about the hill, a hill to climb, but you said, I really want to work with people who are willing to use this as a hill they're willing to die on. This is a fight to the, this is where you put it all in. I loved what you said earlier. If it were
the problem is that the people we're up against have the ability, they have immense amounts of wealth, unimaginable amounts of wealth. And most people have got a price, and I'm afraid, unless your price is your life, and it will be ultimately, you're no good to us, because they can pay. They can always pay, and all you're doing is selling out humanity.
You know what, Andrew? I have a platform. It's not massive, but I do have a platform, and my sole goal is that if I can convince at least one of these people to stop taking the vaccine because of what's happened to me, then that's my job done.
Well, you're on the right side of history, Barry. There's no doubt about it. But history will be written by the victors, and I'm determined that we're going to write that history, and that means we've got to win. And in winning, we will be saving a lot of lives. And when it's over, and I think it will be over, we will have a chance, perhaps, to create a better system for future generations.
And I'm praying on it.
To find ways to help you. Barry, just finally, people seeing your symptoms and saying, I have the same. Have you found anything that's relieved your symptoms, that's really helped you yet?
Only time, Liz. I've pretty much tried everything. I've lay underneath a crystal. I don't honestly think anything other than time has made a difference, but you can see, I don't know if you can see all the tremors through my head and through the arms, but everything, but I haven't given up.
Have you tried acupuncture? Have you tried all of those modalities, the ancient Chinese ones? Well, if anybody...
I did ozone therapy, so I did a HOCAT and I did intravenous ozone. I'm about to start red light therapy and a decompression chamber to see if that helps.
Look, if people have suggestions for Barry, I'd appreciate that. liz.gunn@freenz.org. Please support Barry's books by buying his books and giving them to your friends. It's wonderful, and he's a very good writer. We're going to go out on an excerpt from one of your books, and it's extremely moving, and then to a song from Michael Greger of his Cafe Lockout in Australia.
Well, I think, Barry, it's been a pleasure to meet you. You are a true gladiator, and I salute you.
Thank you, Andrew. Pleasure to meet you too.
Thank you. God bless.
In this excerpt taken from his autobiography, Coming Soon, jab-injured Barry Duffield recalls the unendingly hellish time he's been through since taking the Pfizer shots in 2021. And Barry writes, Chapter 37, Systemic Gaslighting. My agent, Auckland Actors, dropped me from their books soon after I came out publicly about my vaccine injury and my criticism of Jacinda Ardern and the Labour Party for their role in it. The excuse was, we're just cleaning out our books for Christmas. I think that was bullshit, and shame on them, Auckland Actors. I can't say this is the absolute truth, but I do know the owner is a Jacinda sycophant. In interviews on Free NZ with Liz Gunn, I described leg swelling, gag reflex shutdown, heart palpitations, and the tremor, it flaps like a fish, coming after the second jab. I told the country why I wasn't being believed. medical peers dismissing me, media ignoring me, complexity erased into anxiety or long COVID. In June 2025 on Rumble, I called it what it was, ongoing gaslighting, a system that refused to see what it had enabled. Evidence kept stacking up, elevated IgG spike antibodies, D-dimer elevated to 1,550, persistent troponin elevation, even though I'd never had hospitalization before 2021. Now I'd had 3 episodes of sepsis, kidneys and prostate, all treated with IV antibiotics, and 2 severe lung infections. My PSA level elevated from a healthy 1 to 15. I wasn't decomposing inside. It was being made invisible. During this time, New Zealand politics intensified around its COVID response. Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern admitted bluntly, "We effectively created 2 classes of people. That's the vaccinated and the unvaccinated." She told reporters, "If you're still unvaccinated, not only will you be more at risk of catching COVID-19, but many of the freedoms others enjoy will be out of reach." Ardern also said, "If you want summer, get vaccinated," warning that everyday freedoms would be denied to the unvaccinated. Her COVID response minister, Chris Hipkins, reinforced it, urging New Zealanders to do their bit to reach the last unvaccinated clusters. I have seen the video where Chris Hipkins said, "There will be those who hold out and are vaccine hesitant. We will hunt them out over time." And while some media claimed he said, "hunt you down," official transcripts reflect constant pressure on areas lagging in vaccination. This government messaging wasn't neutral. It framed medical status as civic identity. I was fully vaccinated because I had to keep my job. Les Mills absolutely insisted that every employee be vaccinated or would not be allowed on the site. Workplace vaccination was also mandated under New Zealand's COVID-19 Public Health Response Vaccinations Order 2021. The policy applies to a wide range of sectors, including education, healthcare, police, corrections, border, and MIQ workers, among others. The phrase, "no jab, no job," became more than a slogan. It was the operational policy. Employers were legally required to terminate employees who did not comply with vaccine mandates unless they met strict exemption criteria. Many workers lost their livelihoods overnight, caught between career and compliance, body autonomy and bureaucratic decree. The same country that once celebrated health and fitness now uses it as a metric for control. I was tossed into that gap. A man once celebrated for strength, now sidelined by that same narrative. During the COVID-19 Phase 2 Royal Commission, Dr. Matt Shelton was asked, and I'm paraphrasing, "You would agree that the government acted with the best advice they had from the experts at the time?" Note the framing of the question. Very leading. Matt gave a brilliant and entirely on-point answer. He replied, "Yes, they took the advice of every expert who was allowed to speak. But that is easy when you exist in a vacuum. Any expert who spoke up to the contrary, such as myself, was terminated from their appointment or deregistered, as in my case." This is not the exact quote, but close enough. For the unbelievers and the gaslighters, the data speaks louder than opinion. Elevated IgG spike antibody count, repeated troponin spikes, D-dimer plateaus, MRI abnormalities, ECG findings of WPW or cardiomyopathy, recurrent sepsis, documented mental breakdown, a tremor started the day after the jab and never let go, and multiple failed medical referrals. Lawyer Ken Nicholson has been mounting legal action. We're exploring civil claims, possible vaccine injury recognition, and institutional failure. This is not about me. It's about transparency, accountability, and preventing the following cases from being ignored. I was also involved with the Safe and Effective Medical Roadshow thanks to Donna Clapham and Ken Nicholson. We travelled through the major centres of New Zealand, Wellington, Auckland, Christchurch, and more, meeting people with similar vaccine injuries, some even worse than mine. We heard from grieving families of the dead. I spoke on stage, shared my story, and stood beside doctors, lawyers, and scientists committed to uncovering the truth. These weren't just testimonies. They were sobs in the dark, lights flickering against the blackout curtain of public silence. My last visit to the neurologist was a fiasco. Prior to the appointment, I emailed him the results of my blood tests. These privately funded tests have been omitted from my file, and I wanted the neurologist to look at them to see if they could identify any possible causation link to my symptoms. We also discussed what I have long been calling small fibre neuropathy. I've had this condition along with the tremors from the very beginning. The neurologist seemed to forget that and treated it as something new, casually suggesting I see a dermatologist. It is pathetic. To this day, I still have no answers. Every time I show up with something wrong, they look at it as a tree, not collectively as a forest. They will not discuss vaccine injuries. I used my phone camera to record the entire appointment with my neurologist. When the final report came out from him, it omitted my asking him to look at the blood tests and included a Parkinson's acceptance response, which I did not give. I said to him that I have come to terms with the cards I have been dealt, not come to terms with Parkinson's. This isn't just about blame. It's about truth. It's not about anti-vax ideology. It's about medical transparency, informed consent, nuanced individual response, and the cost of enforced uniformity. I've been reshaped by injury, bureaucratic dismissal, and public debate. If one life, like mine, becomes visible, maybe, just maybe, others won't vanish as easily. New Zealand's political rhetoric divided us. Policies carved lines in communities. But the human cost is deeper than that. My arm trembles. My head and left leg are joining the dance. My heart fails. My mind fractures. Yet I'm still writing, still speaking, still demanding to be seen. If I disappear without telling you everything openly and honestly, I will be as complicit as they are. These are the names that matter to me now. Dr. Peter McCulloch, Dr. Ryan Cole, Dr. Pierre Corey, Dr. Robert Malone, Dr. Matt Shelton, Dr. Alison Goodwin, Liz Gunn, Linda Wharton, Dr. John Campbell, Ken Nicholson, Donna Clapham, Gary Moller, and Mark King. These aren't just experts, they are warriors, truth tellers, people who stood on the front lines of a medical and political storm, risking everything, reputation, livelihood, and safety, not for profit, but for us. They didn't bend. They didn't cower. They refused to be silenced while others pushed the narrative and cashed the checks. These are the voices I respect. These are the people I trust. COVID-19 may be in the rear-view mirror for some, but the devastation it left behind is still screaming from the wreckage. The injuries, the deaths, the silence. If you utter the words, "Oh, isn't it time to move on?" in my presence, I'd advise that you duck. Recently, phase 2 of the New Zealand COVID inquiry was held. Over 31,000 submissions poured in. First-hand accounts from the vaccine injured, from grieving families of the dead, and from those crushed by the psychological and financial weight of the lockdowns. 31,000 voices crying for truth, for recognition, for justice. And how did our media respond? They didn't. Not a headline, not a whisper, not a shred of coverage from the mainstream outlets in media that spent years parroting government press releases as if they were gospel. They remain as silent now as they were from the outset. And in that silence, they reveal the truth. They are complicit at the very least. Here in New Zealand, the mandates may have lifted, but the betrayal lingers. The government still refuses to acknowledge the vaccine injured, still refuses to honour the dead, still refuses to stop the quiet distribution of these so-called safe and effective vaccines, products that have shattered lives and stolen futures. We're well past the emergency now. COVID has mutated into something far less dangerous, and natural immunity is widespread. And yet, the mRNA vaccines are still on the market. Why? Not because they're safe, but because admitting otherwise would bring everything crashing down. Billions were spent, contracts were signed, reputations were staked. To pull these vaccines now would be to confess the unthinkable, that the people who raised the alarm were right and those in power got it wrong. Very fucking wrong. Despite tens of thousands of documented injuries and deaths, governments remain silent, regulators dig in their heels, and mainstream media look the other way. The injured are gaslit, the dead, statistics. Globally, the tide is shifting, but here in New Zealand, the wool is still thick over the eyes of the sheep. The mandates are gone, but the damage remains, and so do the vaccines. Quietly stocked, still pushed, still harming. All while the wolves in suits keep feeding on the flock. Chapter 38. The mask slipped. On 13 August 2025, the Royal Commission's Phase 2 hearings, supposed to put the hard questions to the people who held the podium, were abruptly pared back when 4 key decision-makers refused to front in public. Jacinda Ardern, former Prime Minister, Chris Hipkins, former COVID response minister and now Labour leader, Grant Robertson, former Finance Minister, Aisha Verrall, former Health Minister. They told the Commission they'd already been interviewed privately and that repeating it in public would be performative rather than informative, whatever that means. The chair, Grant Illingworth KC, responded by cancelling next week's hearing, saying it was no longer justified without their participation. That phrase, performative rather than informative, landed like a slap to everyone who lived with the consequences of their decisions. We queued, we complied, we lost work, we lost loved ones, and many of us lost our health. Public accountability isn't theatre, it is the point. New Zealand's own media recorded the refusals in plain language. Ardern and the others declined to appear at the public hearing of the COVID-19 inquiry. Full stop. The Commission's mandate, as written, is to learn lessons from the response, so we're better prepared next time. You can't learn much if the central actors won't take the stage. Private interviews conducted off-camera and on their own terms are not a substitute for sworn evidence in daylight, subject to scrutiny, contradiction, and the public record. The terms of reference set the table for real examination. What we got in the end was the sound of chairs being pushed back. This refusal is not about avoiding performance. It's about avoiding exposure of the contraindications, the shifting explanations, and the human costs that never fit tidy talking points. We live with these costs every single day. Our injuries didn't end when the press conferences did. And while they move on to new roles, new speeches, and new ambitions, we are still here, left to carry what their decisions left behind. As I write this paragraph, I am once again housebound with a lung infection, struggling to breathe, unable to work. Oh, this is the gift that keeps on giving. So this is my conclusion and my challenge. Appear. Answer questions under cross-examination. Let the people who carried the burden hear your reasoning under oath and on the record. Anything less is not learning, it's erasure. New Zealanders deserve the truth in full view, not another carefully managed monologue from behind a closed door. Now is the time to stand up and be heard. Now is the time to fight. If we do not, we will be made to live it all over again, and next time it could be worse. I know, because I have already lived it, and I would not wish that on anyone. Silence is not healing. It's complicity.
My father did everything they told him to, lined up and took every single jab. And every time I beg him, Dad, please just think, he'd just laugh and call me crazy. We spread his ashes at his favorite park. I have to say I thought I was out of tears, until his sister whispered into my ear, my love, my poor love, welcome to our weeping years. Tanya was a nurse working in the bush. She didn't want to take it herself, but because she loved the people out there, she decided to take a chance. Now she's going through a metamorphosis, because Pfizer gave her multiple sclerosis. Now she lives with her mother in the city, like a ghost watching us all forget her. And while she is still too angry for tears, all I could hear in her burning eyes was a broken heart warning me, my love, my poor love, welcome to our weeping years. Welcome to our weeping years. And no one is allowed to talk about it. Take all your pain and keep it to yourself. If vaccines are safe and effective, then you must be the thing that's wrong. You're not worthy of state recognition. You're not worthy of any compensation. Not even worthy of a human singing your song. She was 92 and dying in a nursing home, and because her family said no to the jabs, none of them were allowed to see her, so it was clear she would die alone. But then one of her older granddaughters took matters into her own hands. After dark she would break into the home and sneak down the corridors like a thief. Then while the carers were all watching TV, she would climb in bed and spoon her grandmother. She would get into her grandmother's bed and spoon. And even now I can see them there, huddled together like babes lost in the woods, as we and our endless madness hurricane around them, as our madness hurricanes. Oh, can't you hear traveling down deeper into the weeping years. Deeper and deeper and deeper into the weeping years. Into the weeping years. And no one is allowed to talk about it. Take all your pain and keep it to yourself. Look around at all these tumultuous years, for lying has replaced the truth. And the one lie that they need you to sell is that the system cares for you. And the one lie that they need you to sell to your children